Hello, friends. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Am I visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon to one and all. And I welcome all of you. And I welcome today's resource person, Dr. Shabir Parmak, Assistant Professor, Government Arts and Commerce College, Lilia, Amreli, Gujarat. So we better begin with our session. Very soon the students will join us. Sir, Dr. Shabir Parmar. Ji, please.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Huh. So let me introduce you. Dr. Shabir Parmar is currently working as an assistant professor of English at Government Arts and Commerce College, Lilia, District Amreli. Has more than 10 years of teaching experience at diploma, degree, UG and PG levels. Has qualified NET, GSET examinations and GPSC Class 2 twice. Published several research papers in national and international journals. In his doctoral thesis, he examined Iris Murdoch's fictional and philosophical writings. His area of interest includes British literature, Indian writing in English, Indian poetics, and literary criticism. So, this is the brief biodata of Dr. Shamir Parmar. Sir, on behalf of the student participants and my colleagues, I welcome you and I hand over to you.
Thank you so much,
So
sir, for
you can
your
continue. Yes.
yes, sir. Thank you so much for your nice introduction. So,
Uh,
should I start, sir?
yes. They
Okay,
will
just
join us.
okay, sure, sir.
Uh,
So, thank you, sir, for inviting me, and I welcome all the students, those who are preparing for NET and GSET examinations. I'm very happy and delighted to be here and present my notes and observations and share my opinion about literary criticism. So, without wasting much time, I should start. Friends, here I would like to make a point that for reading for examinations like NET and SET, we need to have a specific strategy. And that is what I believe that most of the time students ask a question that which book should I read, how should I read, or which is the where material is available, which book is good for qualifying this type of examinations. So there are numbers of questions. I hope that at the end of this session, we will also try to address your queries or questions. And before starting a session, I would like to make a note that, friends, reading for examinations like NET and SET, we need to be very specific, because how much you read is not important. Okay, the important is that how you read and what strategy you apply for reading or preparation. So that is what I feel. When we are in PG or graduation, during the graduation and PG courses, we are habituated to read in detail, like reading books, critical books, reading original textbooks, reading some of the materials available. So this is what the mindset is set up, that you are habituated to read in detail. Now, when you go for examinations like NET and GSET, as we know that it is in MCQ form, multiple choice questions are there. So at the initial stage, our mind is not set up. It is not adopting the new way of giving examinations. So from here starts our preparation or our idea of how to read. So I advise students many a times that try to prepare your mind in such a way that you read MCQ questions and just not only reading or mugging up the answers, read with a understanding the explanations. Okay, the more you read multiple choice questions, then you try to explore in detail So that is what the first point which I want to make regarding reading. There are many other things also there. So should I let me start my presentation. The topic which I am given is literary criticism from Plato to T.S. Eliot. So I am sharing my screen. Just a minute. So is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So friends, this is the topic, literary criticism from Plato to T.S. Eliot. And in this session, we will try to cover major literary critics from Plato till T.S. Eliot. I have made my presentation in such a way that I am not giving you just outline, but also making notes and comments and how giving you the model that how we can start reading with other topics also. So this is very interesting and a very important topic for all the students, even after before examination like NET and GSET. During PG or UG courses, we have gone through this paper, literary criticism. And we know that there are critics like Plato, Aristotle, and there are many other critics and their contribution that we read and study. So it is a kind of revision that we go through all these major critics in one single lecture. It is very difficult to cover all the critics in this single frame, but I have tried to highlight the most important and key concepts of these critics. So that will help you to prepare for NET and SET examinations. So let us begin. First, we should understand key concept. Like many a time, students are asking to me about these two terms, that literary theory and literary criticism. Sometimes it is confusing. And even friends, let me tell you that I have seen many people that they are not even able to differentiate between theory and criticism. So we have also, you might have gone through, or you will be having another session or literary theory. But here I want to make you very important point regarding what it means. So see, the word theory is derived from the Greek word that is theoria, and which means to contemplate, to speculate, or to see. So I hope that this is a lecture where sometime it makes me that it is virtually we are meeting. But again, if you just go through this PPT, I will say that most of the doubts of your, all of your will be clear. And the basic idea of understanding this theory and criticism is that I am concerned with you that we should read with the basics and fundamentals. The problem is that why NET and SET examinations sometimes seems difficult, because we do not have a foundation or reading of fundamentals or knowledge of basics in our subject. So word theory means to contemplate, to speculate, or to see. So theory means to see something, to contemplate something. Okay. It is like lenses. There is one critic, he said that the literary theory or theory is a lens through which you can see the text. So there is a lens. For example, if I have a lens of red color, I see the red color, the world is red. So it is the lenses through which you see the text. On the other hand, the word criticism, as you know, that it derived from word kritikos, which means to judge. Okay. So the point is, theory gives you a set of ideas, set of framework to see the text. For example, when you read, when you see movie or text from Marxist point of view, what do you see there? You apply these ideas of class conflict. You see about the structure, superstructure, the function of economy. You try to identify from the text such kinds of elements when you see from the Marxist point of view. So, for example, there is a movie called Three Idiot. Okay, I give you a small example so you can identify that when we see Three Idiot movie from the Marxist point of view, we see that there is a character, the man Amir Khan, the Rancho. He belongs to the poor family, and there are aristocratic class also in the society. So aristocratic person who wants that his student needs degree, so he changes the name and all these things, and Amir Khan, behalf of his guardian, study there. So this is the one example. Just I'm giving you example that the text is the same. When you apply the different theories, for example, when you go with the psychoanalytical criticism, you study that how education or other things like engineering and burden is on the student, how students are suffering. There is also one character who commits suicide in the movie. So the same text, you are applying Marxist theory. Okay, when you apply feminist criticism in the same movie, you see that there is a dialogue in the virus, character of virus, that he wants to study his son. He believes that his son is having more responsibility, and because of that, his son might commit suicide. So the same thing is in a different way. So theory is a set of ideas or rules. But on the other hand, criticism is to judge. When you interpret the text, when you judge, when you apply practically, that becomes criticism. Okay, so please remember this thing, that theory and criticism, again, making more clarification. So literary criticism is the study, analysis, evaluations, and interpretation of literature. So when we study, analyze, evaluate, and interpret literature, it is a literary criticism. In other words, it is the practical application of this theory. Okay, when you practically apply to the text, it becomes literary criticism. And theory is the body of ideas and methods, okay, while we're reading the literary text. So this is the basic difference between literary theory and literary criticism, and that we should be more clear, because I heard from many students and they are still not clear that what is criticism and what is literary theory. So theory and criticism, this is what in a very small in a brief way I have tried to differentiate between these two terms. Now coming to the top for today is yes. So as I said, friends, that I will be highlighting the major critics and their key ideas, because it is very difficult to cover all the critics in a single frame. Okay, so this is what we are trying to apply. Okay, so beginning with the Plato. Plato, Greek philosopher, and you know that was the founding figure in Western philosophy. Okay, before reading the understanding the Plato, see the quote. I am trying to add some of the quotes here from the text and from of the critical opinions, because many a time in exams like NET and SET, these quotes are given. And it is very essential, as I believe that it is essential to read these original ideas or words from the particular person. So A.N. Whitehead was a person. He said that the safest and general characterization of European philosophical tradition is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato. What he says that the entire Western philosophy, or European philosophical tradition, is merely a footnote to Plato. So it might be exaggeration, but you know that what he is trying to say is sometime correct also. That Plato was such a towering figure, a scholar, philosopher, thinker. Okay. And he made such a revolutionary contribution in many fields. And therefore, after Plato, whatever is there, Whitehead believes that it is a series of footnotes. See, this question was asked sometime. Who said that European philosophical tradition consists of series of footnotes to Plato? So A.N. Whitehead. So with my observation, understanding or reading or evaluating previous year questions, whatever I have written in this PPT, that is what I consider that some of the most important things that are already asked in the previous questions or exams. So I have taken up this kind of ideas and try to give you comprehensive idea about understanding the critical tradition. Another important thing about the Plato, all of you know that he was student, disciple of Socrates. Okay, and highly, strongly influenced by Socrates. Okay, the relationship between Plato and Socrates is also very important to understand Plato's idea about poetry and his concept of literature. Even friends, Socrates has not written anything. Whatever we know about Socrates, whatever we know about his life, his teaching, his philosophical thoughts, it is the Plato who wrote about Socrates. He presented Socrates as a character in many of his works. And whatever we know about Socrates is due to Plato. So he was such a great thinker. The most important thing about Plato is that he was mainly concerned with the ideal state and the ideal citizen. For him, to construct the ideal state and ideal citizen is important. And therefore, he was basically a philosopher and not a critic. That you know that his main focus was to attain a truth. Why I am raising such kinds of points here? Because of this, we can identify that how he responded in his work about literature. When he was in Athens at that time, it was a period of great wars, and it was very difficult to sustain a state, to save a state. So he wanted that people of my nation, they must be strong, they must be powerful, and they must be able to fight against any kind of, we say that, emergency. So therefore, to make an ideal state was his main concept. And you also remember that he founded the academy in Athens. Plato founded academy in Athens, considered as one of the earliest institutions of higher education or higher learning. I have observed in one exam that this question was asked, that which is the earliest institutions of higher education. So academy in Plato, this is the answer that you know very well. But the important thing here, you know, there is one word, let no one ignorant of geometry enter here. What is this? This is the inscription. It was inscribed on the gate of a Plato's academy. When there, you enter into the gate of Plato's academy, it was, these words were written. And in one, somewhere I have seen that this question was also asked, that who said and who has written. And so that is, Plato believed that the knowledge of geometry and other things, it is important, and that's why he wrote that let no one ignorant of geometry enter here. So this was his main concern. You know his major works, the Dialogue, Ion, Gorgias, Symposium, Phaedrus, and the Republic. These are his famous works in which he presented his ideas about art, literature, society. He presented different characters in his work in a dialogue form. The important thing about Plato's writing is that it is mainly in a dialogue form where there is a discussion is going on. Okay, so that is what is brief about Plato. As a critic, when we see Plato as a critic, we know that he gave the concept of mimesis, which means imitation. Okay, and therefore, he said that all art is essentially an imitation of reality. For Plato, whatever charges he made against the poetry, he find that poetry, from criticism, like a Plato, we should ask a very important question, that for Plato, it was, is literature or poetry useful for society? This was the pertaining question which was in his mind. And therefore, he said that literature is not useful for society. Poetry is not useful of society. Why? Because it does not convey the truth. For Plato, truth was important. So literature or poetry is imaginative. He said that it is an imitation. Poet imitates from nature. Okay, poet imitates from nature. So he is not doing anything new. So the theory of mimesis, and Plato considered that it is twice removed from the reality. Okay, why? Because already poet imitates, it is not in his original. So truth and illusion, the idea of forms, ideas, these are the key concept of Plato's philosophical thoughts. So he said that poetry is twice removed from reality, and therefore you might see that he gives the example of carpenter and many other things. So we are not going to read in detail, but just I am highlighting the key concepts because we have to cover other critics also. So for him, it is a copy of copy. So poetry, literature is a copy of copy, production of different multiple things, and therefore it is not important for society. Poetic inspiration, poet inspires from the nature and other sources, and therefore he believes that it is essentially harmful for society. Because in the mood of inspiration, in the mood of fancy, okay, poet writes many different things, and overall, he raises many charges against poetry. Okay, so these are the four main charges which you see, that poetry is not morally good because it teaches immorality. You see in the poetry or literature that gods and other characters, they are presented. So poetry is immoral. It does not teach you morality. So this is first thing. And what is the use of writing a poetry? It is very important. It is not intellectual activity, because poet is not doing anything new. Okay, he is inspired from the other sources, and then he is trying to reproduce the same thing. So it is intellectually also not good. Emotional effect, that is what Plato again identifies and said that emotionally poetry weakens the people. It makes your heart weak. So I need a soldier, I need a people fighter. So if emotionally poetry is not useful for society and it is not utilitarian ground, that means what is the use of writing the poetry? How poets are the people that they are not giving you the right way, right path. So therefore, from this all ground, he said that literature or particularly poetry is not good for society. So this is what about Plato. I tried to highlight a few main things. So we quickly moving to another because there are more 6 to 7 critics are there. So we will try to quickly go through the main critics. Okay, so I hope that it is not becoming boring because see the entire my session is about criticism and sometimes it is lengthy, but I have to make such things. Though I have tried to make that 2 or maximum 2 or 3 slides for one particular critique, otherwise it is lengthy. And even I am not discussing in detail. So is anyone having any question till now? So we can have one question, otherwise I can go move forward. Hello, should I move forward?
Questions will be at the end of the session.
Okay, sir. Okay, fine, sir.
Sir,
Okay, so coming to Aristotle, the most important thing about Aristotle, which I like, is that Aristotle, see, when you read the Plato, you find that he is asking question that is literature or poetry useful for society or not. Now, Aristotle is such a critic, and I consider him as a scientific temperament. His scientific temperament was such in that level that he gives explanation in detail. He tries to study one and all the aspects of literature, art, and he tried to give you the some picture, clarified picture. Again, as you know that he was disciple of Plato and teacher of Alexander the Great. Okay, so Plato studied from Socrates and Aristotle was disciple of Plato. When he was young, he entered into the academy of Plato and he studied there. And even later he founded his own school named Lyceum. And that school was also very, that school made a great influence during that time on the many other thinkers. So this was his another school. Now his father Nicomachus was a physician. See, his father was physician, a doctor. And therefore the critical mind of Aristotle, how the mindset of Aristotle was developed, the mind of inquiry, mind of questioning everything, that was formed to the young Aristotle. And Philip II of Macedon to teach his son Alexander. So Alexander the Great, Sikandar or Alexander, we know him, was Aristotle was a tutor of him and he invited. And as you know that his founding work is Poetics. Okay, Poetics is his famous work. It is written in 26 chapters, and in this particular text, Aristotle gives answers to many of these pertaining questions. So Aristotle inquires from very early stage that what is art? What is the manner of imitation? Okay, which is the best art in particularly in writing? So he said that tragedy and other things. Okay, so poetics is the earliest surviving work focusing on dramatic theory and literary criticism, and has a profoundly influenced Western literature and philosophy. Now, as we know that Plato and Aristotle, Plato made several charges. He said that poetry or literature is an imitation. Poet is not doing anything new. It is twice removed from reality. But for Aristotle, imitation is not only copy, because it is a nature of human art. It is a nature of human mind to imitate the things. So imitation is a common base for all arts. It is natural for human beings to imitate. So it is not, Aristotle tries to explain that imitation is not bad, because imitation also requires great understanding, and in a way it is a kind of making something new. Okay, so according to him, art is the realization of true ideas in a physical form. So what is art? Okay, yes, it is right that poets and writers and thinkers, particularly artists, they imitate from nature. They imitate and represent the things in a different way. So for Plato, it is not giving the truth. And Aristotle says that art is the realization of a true idea in a physical form. It is what he makes the point here. Again, there are things like he introduces the concept of catharsis, suggesting that tragedy provides emotional purification and a cathartic release for the audience. As Plato made a serious charge against poetry, that literature is emotionally makes people weak. So for Aristotle, that poetry does not make people weak, because when you cry, when the audience see the dramas and tragedies and other things, okay, out of that thing, the catharsis or feeling of purgation, purification is there. So after that, people become more strong, more energetic. So that is what Aristotle tries to counter this. And Aristotle provides systematic analysis like elements of tragedy, epic poetry, and other genres, providing a framework for understanding their structures and purpose. Okay, and this is what the detailed definition of tragedy is, that you might have studied, and you know that how he tries to explain each and every part of tragedy. And I believe that there are few forms of literature that have a proper definition. Like, for example, lyric, poetry, sonnets. There are different forms of literature, drama, literature, other things. But we have one very specific definition, and that is a definition of tragedy by Aristotle. So in this definition, he tries to give a very comprehensive idea of what tragedy is. Okay, that action and plot and language, what kind of the language of tragedy should be, ornamented language, and the action, imitation of an action. Action means the story. So by serious and complete, that the tragic action of the tragedy or the story of the tragedy should be, the subject matter should be serious, and complete means it should have beginning, middle, and end. Okay, so this is what the entire definition, and at the end he says that through pity and fear affecting the proper purgation of these emotions. So at the end, it should arouse a feeling of pity and fear, and that is what actually is a tragedy. Again, I have tried to give you the few terms here. Mostly they are asked in exams like mythos, ethos, lexis, dionyia, melos, opsis. Okay, in examinations like GSET and NET, or even in other GPSC exams, I observed that for literary, these common concepts, because these are very famous terms, peripetia, hamartia. Okay, so what this term mean? So these are the 6 elements or parts of tragedy that plot. In Greek, it is mythos. So plot, what is a plot? Can anyone tell me, can you give me answer about what is a plot? So there can be a small discussion also from any participants, if you can give idea about what is a plot and what is difference between plot and story. And from student, if you answer, just try to present your own understanding, nothing too much more. If it is there, that plot and story, these are the 2 terms which we are using. Okay, so
Sir.
plot is a logical
Hello.
arrangement. Yes,
Sir, may I
Yes.
answer?
yes, please.
Story is the means raw sequence of the incidents, and plot means
Okay.
artistic representation of that incidents.
Okay, so story and plot both are different things. So you said that story is raw sequences.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, for example, if I give you example that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there are 5 incidents are there. Okay. So if we want to describe it in a story form and plot form, so how would you describe it? There are 5 incidents in a one particular story.
Okay, so story will be 1,
Okay.
2, 3, 4, 5, and plot may
Okay.
repeat the incident to have the emotional impact, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 5, in that way.
Okay, good, very good. Thank you. What is your name?
Lavina.
Okay, thank you for your giving me answer. Yes, so this is very important thing. See, plot and story. So plot is a logical arrangement of events. Remember, friends, logical arrangement of events. It doesn't mean that it should start from 1 only. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So story runs like 1 to 10. 1 comes sequence, then comes second part, then comes third, then come 4, then come 5. So this is a story. It runs smoothly. Okay. For example, you take any story, but the problem about the plot, for example, when you read the text and when you see the movie, when your friend asks you that give me just idea of the story, what is about Macbeth? Okay, what is the play Macbeth or Hamlet is about? So what you said that Macbeth was a warrior and he wanted to become a great king. So you are telling the story. You are not telling the plot is in a different way, because plot start from any other sequence, from second, third, fourth, fifth. Just I am giving you examples. So plot is a logical arrangement of events. It can start from the end also. It can start from the flashback also. Okay. So Aristotle says about simple plot, complex plot, characters. So for him, tragedy, characters of tragedy, okay, should be morally good, but not perfect. See, he said that the tragic character should be good, morally good, but not perfect. Because if you are depicting a very perfect character, like saint or some of the prominent figure, completely, it seems that they are not humans. Okay, so for Aristotle, he gives idea about what is a plot, how to write a plot, what are the characters. So there can be good characters also, and even there we should also keep in mind that the character should not be even very bad also. Okay, so what he's talking about the concept of tragic hero, and he gives the term hamartia. Okay, hamartia, there are different meanings, but tragic flow or error in judgment. Okay, because of one or two such quality of that person, these are the such qualities that downfall, they are responsible for the downfall of the person. So for example, when we read Macbeth, what is his hamartia? Okay, can you give example of hamartia from literary text, any text you have read? Anyone? It's okay. See, when we read Hamlet, Hamlet wastes his times in thinking and thinking only. So it is his tragic flow, error in judgment. He is not able to decide at the same time. For Macbeth, why I'm taking the example of this, because this works most of you might have gone through. So for Macbeth, we see that Macbeth is over ambitious. Okay, see the story that King Duncan was about to die, but still he is so ambitious that he thinks that I will be the king, and therefore he murders the king. Okay, and therefore his tragic flow starts. So hamartia is an error of judgment. For Othello, it is suspicious nature. He's very suspicious about everything. Othello. So why tragedy occurs in the life of these characters? Because error of judgment or tragic flow. There is a quality in his personality. They are good, but they are not perfect. See the characters, any character from tragedy, they are good, but they are not perfect characters. And that is why when we are talking about literature, great writers like Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, Geoffrey Chaucer, we often term them as a character, they are life, they are putting their lives into the characters. Okay, so this is what about human nature. So diction, okay, diction, you know that language of tragedy or great work, the diction is also very important, because again, when we go through Indian poetics, you have Bharat Muni, Bhama, and other theorists, and where Bhama in Kavya Alankar said Sabdartho Shahitav Kavyam. Okay, and he is talking about Alankar. So diction is also very important of in writing, because otherwise it is different. Thought, okay, Dionia, song or music, melos. Because see, when you, I must give you example of movie like horror movie. See, when you see horror movie, and if you see that movie without music, without voice, audio, okay, you might have experienced that you might not feel the same charm or same fear in the movie. So the same is about also tragedy also. So song or music is also essential element of tragedy, because it arouses your emotions. Okay, and spectacle, audience is also there. So concepts of peripetia, reversal or fortune, and anagnorisis, recognitions of discovery, these are the another terms. And he's also talking about three dramatic unities: unity of time, unity of place, and unity of action. So roughly, this is what about Aristotle. I hope that I have tried to cover, because every critic has detailed things to understand. But here I am making observations. Now coming to Longinus. Longinus, as you know, that he wrote a famous treatise on the sublime. And here I am giving you the exact, the translated word of this particular work. Okay, now coming to Longinus, his treatise on the sublime is on the style. Okay, so what Aristotle said, what Plato said, is poetry literature useful? for society, what he raised the question. Aristotle, what is a poetry? Okay, what is art? So he is trying to give you the answers. For Longinus, which is the best poetry or literature? Okay, so he said that it should be having the quality of sublime. And therefore, R. Scott James considers him the first romantic critic. Okay, so Longinus can be considered as the first romantic critic because before Longinus there were criticism. It was merely like a mechanical criticism, but he gave a new charm to the critical ideas. And another important thing which I have written is that the work on the sublime is a small treatise, but it is written in an epistolary style. This is also sometime important for MCQ type of questions. By sublime, he means elevation or loftiness. And the sublime is an essential quality of great literature and oratory. So this is what Longinus is about. And he says that sublime, wherever it occurs, consists in a certain loftiness and excellence of language, and that it is by this and this only that the greatest poets and prose writers have gained immense and won themselves a lasting place in the fame of temple. So this is what Longinus is talking about the sublime. As I told you earlier, that when we are reading for examinations for PG, UG, because we are habituated to read for descriptive or writing descriptive answers. For preparation for NET and GSET exam, we need to require reading new techniques. So reading the original text is also important, and making the notes from this text, because sometimes the questions asked, that is the interpretation of these words like sublime, the concept of sublime. Okay, so that therefore we must prepare in such a way that when we read anything, it should give you the complete idea to understanding of what you are reading. Okay, so sublimity is the echo of great soul. This is what Longinus said about. Okay, sublimity is the echo of great soul. And now the question is that, see, Longinus is talking about sublime, the greatness, the loftiness. Okay, the work, Longinus is not talking about ordinary work. He's not talking about any writer, any work. He's talking about the work which pleases, it pleases immediately, it pleases all the time and places, and it pleases forever. Like works of Shakespeare, Kalidas, works of Ramayana, Mahabharata. See the richness of these works. See the richness of Ramayana, Mahabharata. Okay, Kalidas works. Whenever you read, it is evergreen. It addresses all the issues of human psychology or nature. So it pleases all the time, to all the ages. So great work, how great work is formed. Okay, so for Longinus, sublimity is very important quality in literature. He's talking about the work like epic and tragedies and other great works, that they are for all the ages. Okay, irrespective of their country, nation, identity, anything. Okay, Kalidas, you read Kalidas, we are Indian, so we read Kalidas. But when you go to in other foreign countries, people know about Kalidas. Okay, like Shakespeare, Milton, these are the works. So there is a quality of sublimity. So Longinus is talking about these works. And how, now the question is that how to write the sublime works, or what is trying to give you the just hint or ideas about how it becomes sublime work, how it is formed. And we use, these are the sources of sublime. First is grandeur of thoughts. The thought means idea. And it may be the subject matter. Okay, the first thing, there must be a great thought in the mind. Without the great thought in the mind, you can never compose a great work. Think about incident of, I don't recall properly, but there are many incidents in literature. For example, for Milton, the story of Adam and Eve, man's first disobedience. This is the thought where Milton wrote Paradise Lost. Okay. So there are the examples you see in the works that the great thought must be originate in the mind of creator. So first, the thought must be the great. It must be the from the highest level of your understanding. So that is what the first source. After, capacity of strong emotion, that means the strong emotion. When you have thought in the mind, you must have strong emotions. You must have understanding of the greatness of the different emotions. Like as Bharat Muni says about ras. Okay. Shungar, Hashya, Karuna, Rodra, Vir, Bhayanaka, Bibhatsya. So these are the rasas which Bharat Muni is talking about, because without ras, okay, he says that na I kastita pravartita bhav vibhav sayogat ras nispatti. It is like the words. So ras means the state, aesthetic state of being. Okay. So how do you go there with this kind of strong emotional force? So emotions is there. Then again, he's talking about this. So first two sources of sublimity, they are internal. Other, you see, they are the outer external sources, like use of figures of speech, language. Here we can again compare with Bhama and Kuntaka, who is talking about Vakrokti, okay, oblique speech in the writing. Even Russian formalism, you see, Russian formalism, new criticism, they are talking about ambiguities, 7 types of ambiguities. Again, Russian formalism. Okay, whenever you read the new theorist or new critical tradition in the 20th century, people made a great contribution in the 20th century on the language of literature. Okay, images, modernism, you see, Ezra Pound, symbolism, imagism. So what this is trying to what we can identify from this is that appropriate use of figures of speech, alankaras, is essential for literary composition. And diction means the style or writing is there, and dignity of composition. And at the end, composition is very important. You have everything. Okay, for example, when you go to hotel and you order any particular dish, so why in 5-star hotels everything looks good? Because they give you in perfect shape and arrangement. The same thing, you go to any ordinary hotel, there is a difference. Just I am giving you roughly the examples. Please don't connect everywhere, but just trying to make you clear. So dignity of composition means when thought, emotion, diction, everything is there. But where to start, where to put, how to compose. So it is about the entire treatise, entire work. Okay, when you read any other great works of Shakespeare, Kalidas, and other things, you feel that dignity of composition. Okay, I hope this is what we are trying. Still we have time, so let us quickly move. Again, Dante, another very famous person in the critical tradition. Remember that Dante was an Italian poet, and he is referred as Il Sommo Poeta. That means the supreme poet. I have seen this particular phrase in one examination, and this is what That's why I have written here the supreme poet, il sommo poeta. That means the supreme poet he's referred as, and he described as the father of Italian language. And his main question is that what language will the poet use? He's mainly focused on the language, linguistic aspects. And his famous work is De Vulgari Eloquentia, on the eloquence of vernacular. He is trying to give you the idea about vernacular language, the language which is common to all. Okay, so his treatise was written in Latin, but he championed the use of Italian as a literary language. He says that the common Italian language must be there. And even you can identify Dante as his work on the importance of using the mother tongue in education or literature. Okay, so again, I am quickly moving. He is talking about, and he recognizes his linguistic diversity and regional identity in the particular work. Even power of language, how language shapes thoughts, culture, and identity, and therefore he is trying to provide a characteristics or discusses characteristic of a style of writing, clarity, accessibility, emotional resonance, and broader way which we try to understand from Dante is that literature should be more accessible to the audience and it should reach to the every common person of the society. That is what Dante is trying to highlight. I think still we have some time. So there are 2 more critics are there. Now coming to Sir Philip Sidney. Okay, we have discussed classical critics like Plato, Aristotle, Longinus. Then we came to the Dante around 12th century. Now we are entering into the English literary critical tradition. Okay, English, because Sir Philip Sidney, as we see him as a very useful and important figure of particularly Elizabethan literature. Okay, where we see Astrophel and Stella writing about sonnets, true representative of Elizabethan gentlemen. Okay, and his poets, sonnets, songs are very famous and made a very significant contribution in the Elizabethan period of writing. Now he's talking about his critical work is an apology for poetry, or we can identify as the defense of poesy. Defense, he is trying to defend. It was written in approximately 1579 and around 1595 it was published. Okay, after his death. Basically, this work is a response where one person like Stephen Gosson, he made several charges against poetry like Plato did earlier. Okay, so Stephen Gosson in his work, The School of Abuse. Okay, remember these names, even this can be asked. Or they as a student, we must know these things. So Stephen Gosson in the work School of Abuse is talking about some of the elements of writing poetry, and therefore Sidney tries to answer. According to him, the function of poetry is to teach people the substance of virtue, to move people to virtuous action, and to impress upon people the transitory and worthless nature of worldly affairs. So what charges, as I said again, that roughly you can identify the charges against poetry which goes on you made, that poetry is the waste of time, poetry is the mother of lies, it is the nurse of abuse, and Plato had rightly banished poets from his republic. Okay, so these are the several charges which can be seen there. So this particular work, Sir Philip Sidney was famous as a poet, but he thought that it is a high time that I must answer. And he gave a very good analysis of poetry, imitation, art, nature, that how poetry is a kind of he said that the noblest kind of learning makes a person better human being and teaches virtue. So what is poetry? It is the noblest kind of learning and makes person better human being and teaches virtue. This is the important quality which Sydney is highlighting here. Poet is the most truthful person as compared to other human beings. Said that poetry is mother of lies, as Plato says that poetry is twice removed from reality. It does not convey truth. The same thing was in Goson's myth. Oh, Goson, you can pronounce like that. So he said that it is mother of lies. And for Sydney, poet is most truthful person as compared to other human beings. Okay, he gives example of other physicians and other characters. So he said that poetry gives you, yes, there is a imagination, but imagination is just outer layer of poetry writing. Okay, beyond that, it tries to teach you virtue, tries to give you the quality of becoming good humans. And it is not inherent nature of poetry, because yes, there may be, he agrees that there are some poets that they are using poetry for wrong purpose, but it is not inherent nature of poetry. Okay. And even talking to Plato, he said that Plato himself was highly poetical. When we read the work of Plato, like Apology, on the death of Socrates, he writes, or many other works, when Plato writes, he gives a wonderful arguments, thoughts. Beside that, he is using poetic elements in his writing. So these are the charges and the answers of what Sydney made here. Okay, so coming to John Dryden, after Sir Philip Sidney, we should go to John Dryden, a very important figure. Okay, prominent literary figures of Restoration period. As Samuel Johnson rightly says that Dryden is the father of English criticism, is the writer who first taught us to determine upon principle the merit of composition. These are also very important words, thoughts, or you can say that you should read these words and understand it properly. So why Dryden is called as the father of English criticism? Remember, not father of criticism, father of English criticism. Because before Dryden, we have hardly Sir Philip Sidney. There is also Ben Jonson. His work like Discoveries or Timber is there, or some of the prefaces. So there were limited work were available, critical work in English. But it was not systematic. Dryden wrote a systematic treatise, okay, where he is taking several issues raised during his age. So the first English writer to establish criticism as a systematic discipline based on principled analysis and evaluation of literary work. Okay, so Dryden's contribution is that he established criticism as a systematic discipline, okay, to evaluate the works of writers. And he also laid the foundation for descriptive and analytical criticism. There are many other things about Dryden, that he was Restoration dramatist and other things, his famous works, political satires. But we are here focusing on his critical views. So his famous work, An Essay of Dramatic Poesy, that is poetry, was published in 1668. And it is written in the form of dialogue among 4 characters. And these 4 characters are Eugenius, Crites, Lycidius, and Neander. These are the four characters. So the Dryden is writing a critical treatise in a dialogue form. There is a discussion. Okay, four characters. It is kind of story that four people are in a boat. They are going somewhere. They are somehow they are celebrating something, and in between there is a discussion. Okay, and that discussion in question answer form gives a very important critical ideas of Dryden. Even you can observe that this particular work was a response to the preface of the Duke of Lamma, which is a play by Sir Robert Howard, who criticized English playwrights for deviating from the classical rules of drama. Okay, at the age of drama, you know that it is also called neoclassical age, an imitation of classical writers. This was the characteristic. It was the characteristic of writing of that age. But some writers, some poets, they misinterpreted these ideas that we are deviating the form, structures, and rules of writing drama. So the discussion was, the debate was, the discourse was going on, and therefore Dryden responded with this particular his famous work. This is why I have written particularly these characters, because in exams like NET or SET, they try to write about, they try to ask you such kinds of queries or questions which you read from original text. So the character Crites represents Sir Robert Howard. Okay, from that time, who is Crites means ancient. So he argues in favor of the ancient writers. So there is a Crites, character of Crites. He is talking, he favors the ancient writers. Eugene means new. He represents Charles Sackville, and he's talking about, he defends modern drama or modern writers over the ancient. He presents argument how modern writers are good and over the ancient. Again, another character, Lycidius, is Sir Charles Sedley. He's talking about French writer. At that time, French drama was also popular, and there were people they were trying to imitate. And he advocates that French dramatists are superior. And Neander is, you know that Neander means new man, and he's Dryden himself, and he's trying to establish the importance of English drama. So these are the characters and their representations. Now, what I like when you read the Dryden, he gives a definition of drama or literature or poetry, you can say. So again, drama is this definition. When we read, you feel that the first thing that Dryden highlighted, that what is a play, what is a drama? A play is a just and lively image of human nature, representing its passions and humors and the changes of fortune to which it's subject, for the delight and instruct of mankind. For the delight and instruct. So Dryden here is talking about the drama is just and lively image of human nature. Okay. So delight and instruct means to teach and to entertain. Both are the quality. Dryden considers both the qualities, that literature or aim of literature should be to teach also and to instruct also. So this is the definition, which is also sometime one must read again. Now, as a critic, the entire work, essay of dramatic poesy, there are different ideas, or you see when we read the entire work, there are numbers of issues that Dryden is trying to cover, like definition of drama, nature of imitation. Again, he accepts that, like in argument, Christ, the character called Christ, he accepts Aristotle's concept of imitation, that we all imitate. Imitation is a natural tendency of human being. So he imitates that concept. There he is talking about ancient drama and modern drama, French and English drama, that how ancient dramas used three unities, follow rules, techniques, other things. Okay, again, the concept three unities, because at the time Shakespeare and others violated the concept of three unities. Talking to tragic comedy, even there is a discussion of should we mix the comic and tragic elements, because Shakespeare made popular form, that is tragic comedy. So again, there is a discussion on it. Even he is talking about appropriateness of rhyme and blank verse. So we can say that his comparative views on poets and writers. So Dryden presents a comparative views on poets and writers. He gives a very systematic analysis. He discusses about Shakespeare, Homer. He discusses about many other dramatists and writers. So I like this particular lines where Dryden is giving analysis, Neander is giving analysis, that it is asked that who is your famous, Shakespeare or Ben Jonson, because these two Elizabethan writers, both of them were great writers, but they represent different things. So Dryden believes that Shakespeare has a most comprehensive soul. He is using that comprehensive soul in that particular work. And this particular paragraph, I have seen in many examinations, the quotes from this kind of writing are asked, that I must acknowledge him the more correct poet, but Shakespeare is the greatest wit. He was the Homer or father of our dramatic poet. Johnson was Virgil, the partner of elaborate writing. I admire him, but I love Shakespeare. So this is what he's giving comparative analysis of Ben Jonson and William Shakespeare. Yes, so I hope that all of you are listening. Can anyone respond me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Because sometimes virtually speaking, all this thing makes me doubt that are you all listening or sleeping? So coming to William Wordsworth, I know it is some time tough task to cover all the things, but still it is good that we have to. Now Wordsworth, after Dryden, I have picked up Wordsworth, romantic poet. All you know about Wordsworth, his writing, his poetry, his depiction of different forms and colors of natures. Okay, he's a founder of romantic movement in English, romantic age, like with Coleridge. Okay, and important thing is that he brought a completely new approach to the writing of English poetry. So in the romantic age, from neoclassical, after Dryden, you have Dr. Johnson and many other thinkers and writers also. They also made a great contribution. But Wordsworth, as a romantic poet, also made a significant contribution in the field of literary criticism. See, now most of the time people confuse. What I suggest you that don't read, try to understand the writer work and try to read the basics, fundamentals. That is why I'm always making the point that one should have fundamental clears. So see, Preface to lyrical ballad is different thing. Lyrical ballad is a different thing. Okay. What I mean is that lyrical ballads, as you know, that 1798, Wordsworth and Coleridge published poems titled as lyrical ballads. Okay. It is a collection of poems written by Wordsworth and Coleridge. So in 1798, they both published this particular work. Now, in the age of Wordsworth, ballads and lyrical ballads like works like Tintern Abbey, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariners, these were poems published together. And people were not habituated to read such poems in that age. Because during the neoclassical time and several other, the entire scene, the people used to read the poems. They were imitating classical writers. They were highly concerned about the form, meter, rhyme, subject matters. But Wordsworth and Coleridge made experiment, and there is a romantic elements. Okay, because the entire work represent the romantic era. So they published lyrical ballad. After a few years, after 2 years, they thought that people are not understanding the work properly. Okay, they are misinterpreting the poems. So Wordsworth thought to write a preface to lyrical ballads. Okay, so they published lyrical ballads, and in 1800, Wordsworth thought that I should give you some elaboration that what kind of this poetry is, how we have written these kinds of poem, what is his observation, and therefore he wrote a preface, a kind of introductory session to this particular work, and they again published. And even after that, in the second edition, they rewritten in 1802. Okay, so 2 times. So lyrical ballad and preface to lyrical ballads is these are the different things, because I have seen such question in one NET exam that it was made complex by asking ballads and lyrical ballads and their editions. So that is why I have highlighted this point. So I hope that it is clear that lyrical ballads and preface to lyrical ballad, these are the 2 different things. Means the work is the same, but Wordsworth added the preface, and in that preface, he raised a very important questions, like what is a poetry? Who is a poet? What is the value of poetry? And what is the nature of poetic diction? So these are the questions which Wordsworth raised. He is trying to give explanation about his work. And as you said, poetry is a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. Okay. Emotions recollected in tranquility. This is what his famous definition of poetry is there. So he defined poetry that it is a spontaneous overflow of feelings, powerful feelings. All these emotions are recollected in the state of tranquility. Okay. This is what he defines poetry as. Now, who is a poet? It is also a very important question. He says that a poet is a man speaking to a man. It is true, endued with more lively sensibility, more enthusiasm and tenderness, who has a greater knowledge of human nature and a more comprehensive soul. So for Wordsworth, poet is a man speaking to a man. He is not making much distinction, because for him, a language of poetry should be of common speech. He advocates for a poetry for common speech and simplicity of language. And therefore, when we read the poems of Wordsworth and Coleridge in lyrical ballads, you see that another characteristic of romanticism was that they are free from all the rules, free from all the boundaries. You see the musical qualities, you see the depiction of nature, you see that the poetry is highly imaginative. like Kubla Khan, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Okay, mythical, you read the Shelley and you read the poems like Adonis and other things. So all these poets, romantic poets, made these changes in their writing. So for Wordsworth, if poetry is very difficult and not easily accessible to common people, then he is not making the distinction, and therefore he is advocates poetry, language of poetry should be of common speech, ordinary language, rustic language. Okay, he feels that the principal object of poetry is to choose subject and incident from common life. Okay, so these are the few very important observations of William Wordsworth about poetry, poet, language of poetry, diction of poetry, that poetry is spontaneous, emotional. Second thing is about poet is a simple man talking to a man. About poetic diction is talking about the common and simple use of language, simplicity of language. And therefore, for Wordsworth, poetry and other writings is not much differentiated. Here he also gives process of poetic composition. He gives 4 stages of poetic composition. First is observation. In the first stage, poet observes the things. Second stage, he recollects the incidents, recollects the ideas, whatever he has observed. After recollection, third is a filtering the things. Okay, you filter the best moments from the past experiences. And final stage is composition. So these are the 4 stages given by Wordsworth for poetic composition. So this is what about Wordsworth. Now again, coming to Coleridge quickly. I think still I have 10 to 15 minutes, and after the 10 to 15 minutes, we will open for discussion. So S.T. Coleridge and Wordsworth both were romantics. George Sainsbury very rightly says he considers there is a mistake here because the spelling mistake. So then there abide these 3. Aristotle, it is Aristotle, Longinus, and Coleridge. So for George Sainsbury, a very important figure of literary critical history, George Sainsbury, consider Coleridge with Longinus and Aristotle. He gives such importance to Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Coleridge was a poet, philosopher, critic, and co-founder of British Romantic movement. Okay, he was a co-founder and he was also a philosopher. He gives lectures on Shakespeare. He wrote works like famous work, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and another works with Wordsworth about that work Kubla Khan, which was a very important work to understand Coleridge as a poet. Now, Biographia Literaria, which is his critical work, it is a kind of biography of his life in which he writes his critical ideas. So it was published in 2 volumes in 1817. In the 23 chapter of this autobiographical work, Coleridge addresses various topics of philosophy, religion, and literature. The work earned great respect to him and is considered as the most significant work on literary criticism of the Romantic period, which blends philosophy and literature in a different way. Now, friends, you should have a question in your mind that Wordsworth wrote preface in around 1800 and 1802. After roughly we can say that 15 years, Coleridge wrote his observation, understanding of literature or poetry, because he disagreed with Wordsworth and he gave another interpretation. So for Coleridge, poetry is the wider term for Coleridge, and it is an activity which involves whole soul of a man. So for Coleridge, poetry has a broader meaning. The term poetry is a broader meaning. And therefore he defines, this is very important definition, because we remember Coleridge, Wordsworth definition, but not what Coleridge said. He said that a poem is that species of composition which is opposed to work of science by proposing for its immediate object pleasure, not truth. So this is what he is talking about, and he is thinking about that poetry is different from other discipline, philosophy, science, and other discipline. And he argues that he compares poetry and prose and argues a poem contains same element as a prose composition, but the difference is in the use of same words differently, and emphasizes on the use of meter and rhyme. Okay, so for Wordsworth, poetry and was the diction of poetry should be common and rustic. Poet is a man talking to a man. But for Coleridge, he is identifying in a different way. He says that poetry has a different techniques, because see, when we see that we speak, we talk daily, it is not poetry. All our conversation, talk, speech is not poetry. Okay, poet tries to select words, incidents, ideas, and make it more poetic. So that is what he's differentiating. His concept of imagination and fancy is also very important. He is talking about imagination is a core to the poetic heart. So Coleridge is the first person, I believe, that he gave a wonderful explanation of imagination, because as remember the word imitation, Plato, Aristotle, others, those who are referring that imitation, it is imitative in nature. So for Coleridge, imagination is very important, because literature is considered as an imaginative work. But here he is making distinction. He says that there are two types of imagination. One is primary imagination and secondary imagination. Okay, primary imagination is we can say that it is a common part of human nature. It is everywhere. It is general. It is a living and prime agent. He says the primary imagination I hold to be the living power and prime agent of all human perception. Okay, so primary imagination, which we see that it produces images, and it is our faculty of understanding the things, imaginative. But for poets, for creative writers, he is giving importance to the secondary imagination. The secondary imagination, this is wonderful lines. The secondary imagination I consider as an echo of the formal coexistence with the consciousness will. It dissolves, diffuses, dissipates in order to recreate. So primary imagination means there are incidents. He also gives examples from poetry. Okay, when we read some poetic lines, so when there is a description of sky and trees and beautiful environment, so if it is a primary imagination, you cannot connect each and everything. But when the poet, which is having a great poet, is having secondary imagination, you cannot differentiate all these elements. You cannot separate. Okay, like we are mixing sugar in a milk. You cannot differentiate both the things. It dissolves into that. So, for example, some of the writers, when you read Shakespeare, for example, the imaginative ghost, or in Hamlet, or three witches. See, three witches from the Macbeth. Okay, these are the such concepts that they are, when you read ghost or such kind of supernatural elements in other writers, you cannot connect it to the entire play or entire work. But when we see three witches and other characters created, imaginative creator, it surrounded with the work. Okay, so these are the observations, and again he's talking about fancy. It is a kind of logical faculty, the mechanical ability of the person. Okay, so these are the distinction of imagination, fancy, and he's dividing imagination into primary and secondary. That is what you have gone through. Yes, again, plastic power of imagination. He is using the term plastic, which means the power of imagination. It is an ability to shape dissimilar elements of concepts in a unified whole. That is what important here. So this is what the term is about. I like this particular words by Coleridge in the Biographia Literaria, last few paragraphs when we read. He says that poet's good sense is the body of poetic genius. Good sense. He is imaginatively identifying what is a poetic genius or the person who writes a poetry. So good sense is a body of poetic genius. Fancy is a drapery, cloth. Motion, it's life, and imagination is the soul that is everywhere. So very beautiful picture of a poetic genius or a poet is writing in the Biographia Literaria, last paragraph. Okay, now quickly coming to Matthew Arnold. So Wordsworth, Coleridge, romantic criticism. Again, there is Shelley and Keats, but I have focused on Wordsworth and Coleridge. Coming to Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold was a Victorian. He is regarded as critic's critic, and he maintains of high critical standards in evaluating literary works. He emphasized the importance of objectivity, impartiality in criticism, and also cultural criticism and literature and society. These are the concern of Matthew Arnold. He's trying to bring into the critical writing. So very useful observation. His famous works, Essays in Criticism, Culture and Anarchy, The Function of Criticism is the Present Time, and The Study of Poetry. These are the 3 or 4 works of Matthew Arnold, where he gives his ideas about literature, poetry, and even what is a criticism, what a critic should have. So Arnold defined criticism as a disinterested endeavor to learn and propagate the best that is known and thought in the world. This is a beautiful line. A disinterested endeavor. Disinterested means sometimes it is I have seen that disinterested word particularly was asked in one exam. So disinterested means objective. Okay. Endeavor to learn and propagate. So criticism should have quality of objectivity. It should not based on personal bias and other things. And as you know that as a critic, he gave the touchstone method or theory of comparative method of criticism. So for comparative literature, comparative method, Arnold is there. And he says that a critic evaluates poets' work by comparing certain poetic passages from the text to passage in the works of the great poets like Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, and Milton. So touchstone. Okay, he gives this comparative method that read the lines of Dante, Homer, Shakespeare, some of the lines, select this line, and try to evaluate other work with these masters. So you will try to understand how the difference is. Again, I like that he raised the very important point regarding high seriousness in poetry. Okay, the poetry should have high seriousness, and therefore in his study of poetry, he believed that Chaucer he is a great poet, but he's not greatest because he lacks high seriousness. He give also term like sweetness and light. Okay, sweetness represents harmonious development of the emotions, while light symbolizes illuminating of the intellect. And 3 estimate of poetry: historical, personal, and real. These are the 3 he gives estimates to read and understand poetry. Okay, so last we came to T.S. Eliot by evaluating other critics. So this is the last point which I have to make today and discuss. We have to discuss about T.S. Eliot. There are numbers of things. So we are let us finish first, and then we can discuss few things about your observations. If you have any questions, still we have 20 to 25 minutes. So friends, after Matthew Arnold, you see that the modernism in 1888, 1888, Matthew Arnold died. And in the same year, 1888, T.S. Eliot was born. Okay, so when you see the life of T.S. Eliot and Matthew Arnold, you check the dates. Okay, Matthew Arnold died in 1888. In the same year, T.S. Eliot was born. So I personally consider it that T.S. Eliot, though criticizes Arnold, but he founded or expanded criticism, modern criticism in the modern age. Okay. He famously says that I am an Anglo-Catholic in religion, a classicist in literature, and a royalist in politics. Okay, most of you know that he's a poet. As a poet, he wrote Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, The Westland, greatest poem of 20th century. Dramas like many other dramas like Murder in the Cathedral and other. And he's as a literary critic. So Eliot has a diverse personality, has a having quality of making things more different and difficult. When we read poetry of T.S. Eliot, we have to read or kept in mind many numbers of other resources also, history, philosophy, sociology, psychology. So it is very difficult to read T.S. Eliot, but this is what he is making poetry modern. So he belongs to high modern period of modernism and help to redefine the parameters of literary analysis and have enriched our understanding of literature. His views on criticism and objectivity, role of a critic. Even he said that he wrote an essay on metaphysical poetry, and again the poetry of metaphysical age was dead, we can say, but T.S. Eliot renewal that kind of poetry and analyzed John Donne, George Herbert, and other poets. Also, his contribution to setting standardization of criticism is also important. And you can see that as a critic and as a poet, whatever he was writing as a critic, you can see the glimpses of his critical ideas reflected in his poetic work. Okay, like objectivity, theory of impersonality, objective, correlative. So these things you might observe when we read the poems like Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock and other poems. His famous essays and critical works are published in The Sacred Wood and Selected Essays. These are the works, two famous works, in which there are essays like Tradition and the Individual Talent. Okay. Hamlet and his Problems, Metaphysical Poets. These are some of the famous essays which are there. So in Tradition and Individual Talent, T.S. Eliot argues that the poet's work is not solely a product of individuals' creativity, but it is also shaped by the entire literary tradition. So he's talking about tradition and individual talent. He gives a very good explanation of what is a tradition, how the pastness of past is reflected, and individual talent. Even in the same essay, he talks about poetry, where he is rejecting Wordsworth's definition of spontaneous overflow, powerful feeling. Okay, and he gives theory of impersonality in poetry. Like he said that in the same way as a tradition in individual talent, poetry is not a turning loose of emotion, but it is an escape from emotion. It is not expression of personality, but an escape from personality. So these are words by T.S. Eliot, and he's rejecting Wordsworth's idea of poetry. In Hamlet and his problems, objective, correlative. Okay, this is famous essay. You see that in Hamlet, he identifies objective correlative and gives the example of Shakespeare's plays and said that Hamlet is a great play, but it is missing objective correlative. Objective correlative means with objective correlative, there must be a critical opinion. Like when you read Shakespeare two play, one is Hamlet and another is Macbeth. So in Macbeth, you see there is a Lady Macbeth. Whatever the character is going in the mindset of Lady Macbeth, she becomes maid, and she says like that all the perfumes of Arabian cannot clean the hands. Okay, so that is emotional. All the emotions is reflected through these objects, outer external objects, but somewhere it is missing in Hamlet. So this is what is giving the idea of objective correlative. As I said that in metaphysical poet, he praises poets for using complex imagery, intellectual wit, and ability to express profound emotions. Okay, in metaphysical poets, you see that John Donne, George Herbert, Andrew Marvell, they use metaphysical conceit, imageries, and metaphysical poetry is balance, or it gives you about emotional and intellectual effect, spiritual impact, yeah, and satire on the society. So T.S. Eliot renewed the metaphysical poets in his particular essay, and even he is talking about disassociation of sensibility, describing a split between thoughts and feeling in 17th century poetry. So these are some of the ideas of T.S. Eliot's about disassociation of sensibility, objective correlativity, tradition, individual talent, objectivity or impersonality in poetry. So this is what about T.S. Eliot. I know that there are other things are also there in this particular area, that is literary criticism. It is a very broad area. There are numbers of critics, number of theorists. To understand each and every critic and their work and ideas, it is somehow difficult. But what I tried here is to give you a comprehensive idea. Even when we read or when we prepare for examinations, we must have a comprehensive idea of the person. Sometimes what happens, we read a lot, but we are not able to identify the core principles or ideas. Okay, so this is why I have given you the quotes and other things and words from the real definitions, and particularly the original words of the writer himself. So when these things are clear in the mind, the basics, the fundamentals are clear, you can understand the person in a more better way. So this is from my side. Just last slide I want to add here, that we can discuss later, that for when we are preparing for NET and SET examination, I give such kinds of observation that whenever you prepare for such exams, focus on basics and fundamental. That is what I believe. Refer syllabus of UG and PG of some of the universities. Why? Because sometimes students are confused at what to read, how to start, where to start. So I give example that collect 3 or 4 universities PG syllabus, because in PG syllabus, whatever is in the syllabus, they are extracted, they are chosen the best from the context. So read and understand, and you will come to know which are the best writer, what are the best critical ideas, which are the text in other different papers. So through that, you can prepare your reading notes. Even read good reference book, I suggest. Sometimes students waste time in only collecting material. I have seen many students that they are asking questions that, sir, where to collect material or what to do. So it is, don't waste much time. Start reading. The way you will start reading, the more you will explore writings, observations, notes. You yourself will identify what to do and what not to do. Okay, so don't waste much time in only collecting material, because sometimes we have lots of materials and books, but we are not reading. So that is not good. Even I observe that prepare your own reading notes. As I said earlier, MCQ, how to make your mindset habituated to read MCQ questions. Read daily. Okay, daily read whatever you know. Don't think that I will complete the entire book in one day. It's okay. Whatever you read, read daily. Practice daily. Okay. And after reading, discussion and revision is also there. Okay, you read after 1 week, 10 days, one should have recollection of all these things, whatever you have read and observation. So, for example, if you are preparing a schedule that we read for 1 week, and at one day, whatever you have read, try to go through again. So give 1 day for revision or discussion. So these are some of the observations. There are also sites available on the UGC net and portal that they give you practice papers. You can practice the same net examination at your home through your mobile. Just log in there and the paper will be there. It is a authentic site from UGC net. Try to practice questions. Don't worry about what you know and what you how marks you get, but try to practice these kinds of practice MOOC, or we can say that mock papers, question paper or examination, so your foundation of reading will be improved. So this is from my side. I hope that I have at least cover some of the aspects of this literary criticism. It may be possible that I have missed some things, and there might be some unclarity, but this is what I can present in this particular limited time era. Yes, yes, sir. Over to you. And if students have any questions, they can ask these
Yes,
questions.
student participants, if you have any questions,
Please share your
no questions?
questions or
Yeah, clear. Uh, Student participants, any questions?
any observation
Kushi
from
Patel, Pratham Patel, then Bhagwati Parmar, Dharmesh Patel, Dimple Parmar, Kruti Jani, Sushti Dave, Sunil Bhojani. Any question? Kruti
any question,
Prajapati.
or you can also not, if question is not there, you can also have about preparation related questions or general observations if you want to make. That is good, that discussion is healthy.
No, they study literary criticism at TY level, and then they study it at MA previous level.
Okay, sir.
So somehow they are familiar with the topic or
Good,
criticism,
good, sir.
and their more concern is with theory,
Yes,
because theory can't be covered, the whole of the theory. So we have parts of it.
yes,
So thank you very much, sir,
yes,
for
sir.
sparing time for our student participants.
It's their
and
pleasure.
speaking for 2 hours and making some of the things very clear to them. And on behalf of the department or my personal behalf and my colleagues' behalf, I thank you, sir.
Thank you
There
so
is
much.
one announcement. Yes. Now I have to talk to them.
Yes.
So there is one announcement that there is no lecture tomorrow. So, and there is a new timetable. So we will upload it and you will get it. Okay. So follow that timetable. Now few days are left, and so remain present and try to participate in discussions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you,
Thank
student
you, sir.
participants.
Thank you, students, for your patience listening. I hope and I best of luck that all of you, sir and madam, and the department is really doing a good job for organizing such kinds of lectures. So I hope that all the students you try hard and come up with maximum good result. Again, thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you so much. See you.